Hello, Glenn.
What's happening?
Hey, Glenn.
Hi. Is that Danny?
Yeah.
That's right.
You? Anybody else?
Not. I don't know if anybody else is listening. I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'll check.
I was just deciphering. What happened?
Hey.
I said I was just deciphering. Well, I believe it to be some type of message from.
Which one?
Huh?
Which one?
Which one? Oh, it was actually 3 different cases from what I could see. One in New Jersey, one in Delaware, and the third place is under an old bridge somewhere. I don't know. That's what the news article says. It's basically, I was telling Jennifer about it. I saw, on the news. I don't know why they would mention it, but it was they said a harp seal or seal.
Yeah, she mentioned seal, and I said that's linked to the 7th seal.
The 7th one.
Hey?
Because
The 7th seal or 7th seal?
7th seal.
7th seal.
It's about the green horse. Pale horse, some call it. The green horse. I guess you didn't see the thing on YouTube last night. They had a demonstration in Egypt, and across the screen walked this green horse.
Really?
The rider sitting backwards.
Huh.
And religious people all in a tizzy saying that it was the 7th seal. It announces the end times.
But that's the same conclusion I was coming to with the seal, because in law it means a seal is like it's a sign for it could be a corporation or whatever that they're gonna execute an instrument, and the instrument is America, and the only angels play harps, which is the instrument. So I don't know. I came to the same conclusion when I looked at.
The harp is the name of our Prime Minister, Harper.
Oh, really? Huh.
And it's a symbol of the leprechaun in Ireland. They were having an election in Ireland.
I'm looking at
that, but what I was saying yesterday is the video, of course, is fabricated.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like watching a football game. When you watch a football game and you're asking yourself, how far do they have to go to the first down? And on the TV screen there appears a line of different color. So you know exactly the distance they have to travel to get a first down. And of course the people in the stadium can't see that, in the same way as nobody at the demonstration saw a green horse. Nobody paid attention, nobody looked over, from the audience, because of course it wasn't there. It's just kind of a TV trick they play, but the importance is the symbolism. They were trying to put out a message that there's a restart, like a first down, a new beginning about to happen.
Yeah. It's saying the 7th seal is the prophecy, right?
The opening of the 7th seal announces the end of the world type of thing.
Yeah, that's what they're saying here. It's sounded by trumpets. First trumpet sounded, over a hail of fire mingled with blood. Whoa.
Yeah, the
cast down upon the earth.
trumpets we got last summer at the World games, World Soccer Games, the Zuzuvela.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was talking about that.
Everybody was complaining, but it's what was the name of the guy who blew his horn and the walls came tumbling down? Joshua, I think it was.
I think so. Not sure.
So what the system through the media is announcing is a new beginning is just around the corner.
Yeah.
Mind you, that's what the cell has been telling me. And I keep reminding them that just around the corner might mean something to them. To me, it's almost impossible to grasp because of the difference between what does just around the corner mean to people in different places. And I told them, if you're walking down the street, somebody said it's just around the corner, you have a sense of where that is.
Right.
But if you're dealing with people who deal with eternity, just around the corner to them may be a long time to us.
Right. Alder Amim is just around the corner,
Yeah, and it's 5,000 years away.
Right.
So that's the problem, is the languaging is not precise.
Yeah.
But that, again, is not the important thing. The important thing is some people in the media want us to believe that something's about to get a restart or is just around the corner. And since they're going to make it happen, they know better than we do.
Yeah.
Since the media would be responsible for making it happen. I'm looking at the name Superior and Lake Superior, Mother Superior, and because there's a company that delivers propane gas called Superior Propane, and prop means to push up. And I've just recently discovered that their headquarters, their origin, is at Thunder Bay on the end of Lake Superior in Canada. And there's a hint there, Lake Superior, Thunder Bay. A big explosion is like thunder.
Yeah.
And if you start from the second letter, it becomes Hunder Bay. Under Gore Bay, there will be a big explosion. Now, I did some checking and I asked someone who should know what would cause propane to explode. And the way it was explained to me is, say you had a large tank of propane, bigger than family size there, but, industrial tanks, like they store oil in.
Yeah.
If you had one of those and you open up the tap, what would happen is the propane starts leaking out. And what it does is find the lowest ground around, because it's heavier than air, it goes down, and it creates kind of a cloud.
Yeah.
And it spreads, gets bigger and bigger in its circumference from the source of the leak. And it'll go that way until it hits a flame. If there's anything like a flame on a machine or a furnace or something like that that's used as the starter flame, kaboom is the response. It blows up the entire area that is covered by the mist. Now, if you put that concept in tunnels underneath Lake Superior, that's basically what would trigger a blind thrust. So the explosion goes towards the weakest point, and in that case, it would be going straight up. That would cause rocks to go up, and as soon as they were loose and the water was pushing on them, they would push out of place. So it is a known fact that in that entire area around Lake Superior, they have been mining copper and iron ore for centuries, even before the arrival of the white man. So there's got to be all kinds of rooms, caves that have been emptied over the years of their mineral content. And if it's in the neighborhood of a source of propane gas, natural source of propane gas, that's what would be happening. It would be filling with a cloud of propane. And when somebody would light the ignition, all you need to do is you have a small hole dug at a distance into the cave, and you put a fire at that end. Eventually, what will happen is the gas will rise to a level, seep into that hole, find the flame, and kaboom.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Thunder Bay was the location of Superior Propane's headquarters, because they always announce it as Calgary, Alberta. But I had some business to do with our propane tanks, and I asked the people, and they said, "Oh no, the original office is in Thunder Bay."
That kind of coincides with all the natural gas drilling that's going on in Marcellus Shale area, which is basically from Tennessee all the way up to New York, and it's, touches Jersey all the way up to the western side of Pennsylvania, northern side of, right by Michigan, right by the water right there, the lake. And if it's a massive area, and they've been drilling there for years, and if that's natural gas, all they have to do is set a spark down there, that whole area would just drop down.
Yeah.
And the water can come right towards, or make the black water, whatever they decide to do with that. That whole.
Wait, by the way, before I forget, with the seals, they found the seals in Amboy, New Jersey, in central New Jersey, and Elsinboro, Delaware. I thought the names were kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the seven seals. They say it says the seventh one still has to be opened, and it said, but once 144,000 are sealed, the four angels standing at the four corners of the earth are allowed to release the four winds, which will hurt the earth and seas and trees. The hurting of the earth, the seas, and the trees is in fact the beginning of the seventh seal.
Right. Well, at the same time yesterday here, there was such a windy day that when I stepped out in the morning, there were branches all over the ground. And that's, on the treetops, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock.
That's when I called you the other day. I was talking to Jennifer, and I just watched the news, and they made this big fuss. They were like, "This big storm or this huge winds."
Yeah.
And they mentioned California, Nevada, New York, and just huge winds would be blowing, they said. Yeah. And it was windy over here that day.
Well, I would suggest that all of that is linked to a formula which begins on what they call Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday is Good Thursday, the day before Good Friday. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the calendar, I'm sure you're going to see that Easter is at the beginning of the month of April, April Fools and the Lou. Mm-hmm. And the important dates are Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, the Saturday, which is penultimate, Easter, and Easter Sunday, Easter Monday. That's a bunch of possibilities. But more likely is something they call Whit Sunday, which is 49 days after Easter, celebrates the Pentecost. Mm-hmm. The Pentecost is Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, they call the next day Whit Monday, and it's the 50th day after. And 50 seems to be linked to the Valkyries. And the halfway point to 50 is the 26th day. So keep that in mind. And that would bring it into about the first week in June. Mm. June and July are 2 months that have been added to the calendar, of course.
There were so many things to consider.
Yeah.
It's like
we're probably going to see a mini gap followed by a maxi gap. And the mini gap would probably be the breaking of the locks that hold back the water at Sault Ste. Marie. And the maxi gap would be the breaking of the peninsula. Mini gap is the word that they use in Winnipeg. Flip the W around, mini, and change the E for an A. Winnipeg, mini gap. We know that in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there was the jumping of an expressway a couple of years ago, moved sideways 30 feet. That would have been a test to make sure their ground positioning was on track from underground. So the signs, if nothing else, signs are all around. You know? So are they signs in order to mislead, or are they signs in order to really point the finger?
In my mind,
sung by Johnny Cash, standing at the gates of hell, I won't turn back.
In my mind, I think when I see signs, I think it's like a contract that most people aren't aware of, that they just kind of agreeing to, according to their system. So.
Well, we'll see. If one understands the process of what's happening, and you can tell by that letter that Jenny put out to the woman
Burton.
in the Department of Citizenship and immigration, whose name, by the way, was J. Burton.
You are.
Burt, B-U-R-T. The B is the penultimate letter of D. And if you have D-U-R-T, you have turd, coprolite. If you have T-O-N, you have a ton, which is the year 2000. The second millennium, and this is the second decade in the second millennium.
Yeah.
And now we're in the second year of the second decade in the second millennium. So that's a key, that governments, corporations, religions, business is no longer run by their leaders, but the decisions are being made by executive assistants, young politicians in training type of thing, young businessmen in training or businesswomen in training, are making the decisions without management ever knowing the key. And the problem we see here is within the minds of the people, they can't grasp that. So they're going from a range of being juvenile to senile without ever stopping by the point where people become knowledgeable. And things are going to be allowed to happen because nobody is watching the store from down below. Now that's what you have now with clerks being in charge of almost everything. But in making a list, I remembered that I used to do some printing as a young man to earn some money working overtime, and the guy was a Protestant minister of some kind, probably Anglican, but I'm not certain. And he had bought a printing press from me, didn't know how to run it, and he asked me to come in and do the job for him. And what he was printing was a little booklet called Triune Man. 3-in-1 man, which equates to triphibian. Now, if you take male and female and you add the Neanderthaler medulla, the word medulla says a feminine dean because the U can be an A. So there's a male infrastructure, a female porcelain cover on the whole thing, but a computer on the inside that is being run by the media, or the word they use is the dean. The old guy is Dino the dinosaur. That's an element added to the hermaphrodite. Then you have the telephone, receiver and speaker. Those are two separate elements added so that they can listen in to conversations without being there, and they can speak to the medulla to give direction. Then you have the video, which is linked to the third eye, or pituitary, which can see without having an eye, and was always symbolized by the Hindu mark on the forehead.
Yeah.
Next, you have the gill, which would allow survival in water for periods of time that are much more long-lasting than any human being has normally been able to hold their breath. The gill would probably fit in the cleavage of a bikini and therefore be hidden by the strap that holds it together, while the telephone would be, and the receiver would be in the left breast. The right breast would probably be the GPS, ground positioning system, to know where this person is all the time. And then in the pants of the bikini, you could very easily fit a marsupial pouch, which is suggested as the way to go in the future for carrying a baby around when you're a busy slave, to be like a kangaroo, have a pouch where a very small baby can enter and grow to a much larger size, but not be inside the body, since they need space inside the body for other things. The antenna, which is described as a unicorn, can be the hair of the person or the spine fitted as an antenna. And the receiver attached to the ear is an iPod. We're seeing people walk around with iPods in their ear. And finally, the pineal gland, which is linked in old times to the time we were fish and reptilian, has something to do in the gill extracting oxygen like fish do out of water, but even more important than that, it has the ability to enable space travel by hibernation. Long distances can be very boring and can cause a lot of excessive use of materials which are not replaceable, and therefore hibernation seems to be the best way to go. And in tests done recently on bears, it was found that they are able to shut their body down much more than was at first assumed. It was thought that they could shut their body down to about 50% of the normal intake of oxygen, no food, and no excrement for the period that they're in hibernation. And they've discovered that it can operate that way very well at a level somewhere between 25% and a third of normal function. Now, if you were to forget about space travel or living underwater, and you assemble all these pieces together, and there are about 10 pieces added to male and female, which gives you a 12-element structure. What you have is not simply the perfect slave. What you have is the perfect assassin. Imagine someone who kills someone, and the police are chasing them, and they jump in the water and never come out while they're looking, and that they could stay in water for 6 months. You would never find them. But even worse thought for the police, they could sneak into a very small, tight corner underneath something and hibernate. for months on end, and no need for food, no need for excrement, and therefore, hey, perfect slave. If somebody was swimming, they could, like a seal, come up from below and hug the person and drag it down. And because they have a gill and can hibernate, I mean, they could hold the person down until they die quite easily. Then just release the body and nobody would know any different. So it's a terrible weapon, this triune man that they're creating. And of course, nobody would think of it as a man because the outside is cosmetic. It's female.
And that's what I was going to say, up to the point before, when it was just space travel, that's what they call, in with all the pirates and stuff, they call that a seaworthy.
Yeah.
A manned vessel.
So that's what they're building. The elements are all in place. The next few years will be spent assembling all of these elements into single individuals, a third kind, gender. Never mind the little guy that comes out from underground. You don't have to worry about him too much, causing too much of a problem by himself above ground. But this perfect assassin, and of course an assassin comes in on an ass. And if you look back in time, you know, when you set up a business or a police force or whatever, it's the top brass that runs the show. Jesus is in an ass. And, it's all symbolic of leadership. Is the word ass. It's the beginning, and it's all linked to number 7. Number 7 planet is you are Annis. Uranus. You are Annis, the 7th planet. And right now, they're looking to replace Pluto. Pluto is just a god. They want to replace it with something more permanent than this god, which probably is linked to the computer. And they're claiming to have spotted a new planet that's on the outer rim of the Oort cloud. And they're trying to see if it's real or not. But it would become the 9th planet instead of Pluto. So all of the infrastructure for their changing, going back in time, new management, which is happening in all the Arab countries and Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Venezuela. All of these places are getting new management and getting all of the problems now. And my suggestion is it's the modus operandi that they use. They always go after their own people first in order to buy deniability. So when they go after who they're really after in the future, they can say, hey, it can't be us, you know. In the concentration camp, they put in Masons when they first built the concentration camps in Poland. They first put in Masons, then they put in gays, then they put in gypsies. And these are all team members. of the system. So now they're doing it with Australia and New Zealand and Chile and Pakistan, all of these places in the southern hemisphere in preparation for really going after the ones they really want, which is the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is when a major event takes place in the United States, for example, all their first response material will have been sent out to help New Zealand, to help Australia, to help South America, Haiti, and they won't have anything. They won't have any nurses. They won't have any doctors to spare, and they certainly won't have the supplies that go along with it.
Those assassins that you mentioned earlier, you think they'll be used like in that 1,000 Years of Peace for the people that
to
survive?
the culling
Yeah.
of any survivors. They've promised a lot of people that they will live through this period, and they really don't need them.
Yeah.
And they're really going to be a burden. So with this new assassin on the loose, it's symbolic of the siren on the rocks, the female-looking fish, who calls them over with a swan song.
Yep.
And of course they crash.
Have you ever seen Chronicles of Riddick? It's kind of like that.
What was that?
The movie Chronicles of Riddick is kind of like just what you're saying, like that. Basically, an assassin that goes around, or like they always show in the movie that they have these people that can go around in the future and they're kind of cyborg, kind of manipulated genetically, and they're these ultra assassins, can jump 50 feet in the air and super strength, and they. Always showing
a symbolic movie. I didn't watch all of it, but in the movie, it's called Sinjin or something like that. And it's a movie. It's this corporation who funds this project to make this assassin military soldier, and it's like this fish, it looks like a fish.
Yeah.
And it goes around just killing people, and nobody's stopping it.
Hey, you look at the St. Lawrence Seaway, Fort Drum at one end, McGill University at the other end. Queen's University across at Kingston. You've got the Royal Military College right there. They could be working on this version and testing it in the St. Lawrence Seaway. No problem at all. Fort Drum, of course, has the RU in there, and RU is important. We originate from the Middle East in a place called
Yeah.
And Hurons and Rumsfeld. You look around, find the letters in words like murder,
urgency,
rum,
urgency,
urgency, emergency. It's you are you, and you are. Russell, Ruse.
Yeah.
Jerusalem.
Crazy, the reality of all this stuff. I want, in your mind, because I've been looking at, the concept of, different dimensions and stuff, and from one source, they say in string theory, I think, and M theory, one of them is 11 dimensions, and the other is 26 dimensions. And I've heard you say there's 26 universes. And I'm not sure, how many dimensions they found so far. 11 seems to make sense to me, because the source that I found that they were like explaining. And
well, the eternity sign is like a number 8 lying on its side. And that's a measurement of the radius of a universe. The shape of a universe, very much like an American football. Starting at a point, getting larger, and coming back down to a point. And if you take the radius of that, the shape that you get is like a figure 8.
So you're saying 8 dimensions?
So what I'm saying is that there are a number of activities going on, starting at 0, which is an egg, cosmetic, which is a baby, child, and leading up to female, alter, male, and the play on that. That's the activity that has to be dealt with. Now, we're dealing in a situation where there are only 4 dimensions here. And in order to have more than 4 dimensions, you have to go outside this football shape and look at matter. Now, in matter, the question is, how many universes can you have there? And my interpretation is that 2 at any time, and a total of 26 possibilities in the long run seems to me to be what they're working in. 2 and 6 is an 8. It plays with that figure of eternity on its side. I mean, at one time I knew. At one time you both knew. And it's a matter of when you're living a life, you forget, and then you have to relearn it. And that's why it takes time in order to arrive at that point, because time is the 4th dimension. You can't know it as a child. You can't know it as a young person. And if you missed it along the way, you can't know it as an old person, because senility takes over at one stage of the game for those who haven't figured it out. So there's a window there that I suggest is between age 55 and 70 or thereabouts.
Yeah, I think what's it called, with that whole concept, I found it really interesting that like the how they describe 5th dimension. On my understanding, they described it as it's chance, from different choices, and will. In the Kabbalah, they describe it as that, will. And that's interesting, because when you're saying, creation resides in may possibly 5th or 6th dimension, and that makes sense to me. It's like when people what happened? Hello? Hello?
Did we lose him?
Hello.
Glenn?
Yeah.
Hey.
All right. It didn't even ring that time.
I think Ma Bell didn't like our conversation.
Cheers.
Getting into the matter of matter.
Yeah,
that's what matters.
I just tried calling you. It didn't even ring. I was like, what's going on?
And I tried to call you, and it said that the person you're trying to call at that number is not available. And that's
we heard you saying hello at one point, though. You were saying hello, hello. We were saying hello back, but I guess you couldn't hear us.
I was saying hello, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See how you crazy.
Hang on, I'm going to switch lines here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You there?
Yeah. That's evidence for everybody in the world to see how you get messed with.
By the way, I was trying to explain that in the word matter you have the 8, ATE is part of that, and ER is 2. So 2 8s are suggestive of there being 2 universes at any time, one which is the trial universe, the other one which is the repair job.
Like the Audi symbol.
Yeah. And in all, there would be 13 such combinations of 2. 26. Whether they're all operational at any time is a matter for anybody's guess.
Right.
Well, when you said earlier, that was interesting. You said from juvenile to senile. I've looked at a little bit into people who help like quantum physics and some scientists. I guess they study math, and a lot of them or a few of them went crazy or just went insane. Why would that happen? You think?
It seems to be a safety valve that they've implanted into the genetics of people, that once their actual purpose has been achieved, then they can be turned off as a reasoning individual, something like Cassius Clay and Ron Reagan are just 2 examples, but there are thousands and thousands. And I would suggest that if you worked in an asylum, you would see many of these people being brought in and put into these places so that they can be basically put on drugs so that they can't communicate, and their control over their activities is passed over to a third party who takes responsibility for them, but they're not exactly always the friend of the patient. They are the control interest, and governments pay them to be the monitors of this individual so that the paperwork can reflect that someone is taking care of them, they have family. But if you were living in an asylum, you would notice sometimes that some people regain sanity.
Oh, really?
And at that point in time, it's not unheard of that those people are taken to a hospital and frontal lobotomized so that they don't have access to the information that they carry. And to me, it's the story of Jenny is what they did to her caused her to do certain things while under their direction, and then forget those directions so that they're not easily accessible. But what they believe is that she broke out of that control of theirs and is gradually regaining her memory of all of the things that she was programmed for, and will be able to blow the whistle on exactly what is being done to mental patients through psychological abuse and physical abuse.
What do you think they're saying? I noticed in like a lot of soap operas, a common theme they would use was amnesia. Is that linked to any of that? What they, what's the word? Term is amnesia, the diagnosis. Is that like anything related to that?
Yeah, and I'm sure it's linked as well to the pineal gland and the possibility of hibernation. What we call senility may be the partial hibernation of the brain, that it's not functioning totally.
With my father, like part of his brain, they say like blood just stopped flowing.
Yeah.
So something turned it off.
And you got to remember that idiot savants, the Neanderthaler group that went through this process, suffered through what appeared to be cryogenic hibernation, frozen and then defrosted, and you end up with a genius on one particular thing who has really no abilities in the basics of taking care of themselves, that kind of stuff. So until it was understood that there was a possibility built in to the human being, this was just theory, a product simply of the brain. But now that we know melatonin is the chemistry created by the pineal gland, and it serves no useful purpose in the body, having been more practical at the time of evolution when we were fish and reptiles coming out of the water, used mostly for hibernation and extracting oxygen from the water. Now we know that we carry this gland in our body, then the rest of it cannot be questioned, that you can reverse the process and bring this gland into some primary position of functioning in the body today, thus making the perfect assassin, but also creating an advanced state of senility. Could very well be the cause of Alzheimer's.
Oh man, it seems like they just cover everything.
Well, they've had enough time.
It makes sense, though. Totally makes sense. And now then they could get science to go throw more money at it so they could study it even further on live subjects. So it's all,
you look at the money they've made from breast cancer. The Rockefellers are running it through the Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute, and they're getting women to take off breasts, and that way they can test how they can hide things inside there in the implants and that kind of stuff. Mechanical at the beginning, but biological in the long run.
Yeah, I wonder who started that. Like, who made it acceptable, for breasts to be enlarged or whatever.
Well, the one with the most direct knowledge and advantage gained from that is a plastic surgeon.
Yeah.
So you have to look at plastic surgeons as being the root of any change in the physical body today.
Actually, you know what? There's a movie about the guy who started that, the whole...
Yeah, Breastman, it's called, I think,
yeah,
right?
Breastman. I think it's the guy from Friends, I think is the main name.
plus the fact that they have a coded system of marking the upper palate by pretending to do cleft palate surgery. They are, in fact, implanting the brands or the marks on the upper palate so that future doctors will know, plastic surgeons, what has occurred to this person. And it can only be seen through X-rays, and therefore only a small group of people would have access to reading X-rays. Jenny was asked by a doctor who looked at her X-rays while they were awaiting Jenny's doctor. The guy who looked at it didn't know her from Adam, and he said, did you have cleft lip surgery when you were a kid? And she said, I have no knowledge of that. He went,
What?
And he was looking at the X-ray.
Wow. So you could just ask a local X-ray technician, and they'd probably be open with it.
Well, they would know because it's like a brand on a cow's rear end. If you stick the mark inside the upper palate of the mouth, it's a much better way of hiding it than putting it on the forehead.
Wow.
The pituitary gland, of course, sees without eyes, so it's obviously connected to the eyes themselves and brings the image into focus and 3-dimension on a one screen. So is that information then communicatable through the process of the telephone system? I suggest it would be, so that they would not only have image or sound, but they would have image as well.
Yeah, with the clerks, I looked that up, and I seen that they were like in all important positions.
Yeah.
And that word clerk, I think it's linked to Clark, like in Clark Kent.
In England, they call him Clark.
So Clark Kent working for the media or whatever.
Yeah, my second wife's name was Shelley Ann Clark.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's out to SAC, S-A-C.
Clark.
Strategic Air Command.
Mm-hmm. That's another acronym for SEAL.
SAG in French is a SAC.
Yeah. For SEAL, I've seen the acronym for it. It's Sea, Air, and Land for the Navy SEALs. So I don't know. I think that's like another link.
Cassiopeia has SAC backwards at the beginning of the word.
Yeah. Got a link to like W or something like that.
CAS.
So I think we it would be better if like I don't know, like I guess people with functioning brain could collaborate more like I guess I definitely see how we could collaborate like on the farm every day or something.
Well, it's the best way to learn is not in a school environment, but in an actual living environment. You learn by osmosis. When something occurs, that's the best time for people to learn. So, any event, if you got any questions, I got to get back to handing out some feed here.
Anybody got a question?
Hello?
No.
Okay.
Mike, you got a question?
Yeah, I got a quick question for Glenn.
Yeah, Mike.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, is places above the 45th parallel safe areas in the next 100 years for people to live?
Above the 45th? No.
Yeah. No?
It has to be above the 53rd, with the exception of the V shape, which is the Canadian Shield, and it comes down to Ogdensburg at about the 44th parallel.
Okay. So people living in, let's say, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Canada, parts of Canada, and Alaska, they're pretty much safe?
Yeah, Greenland. But Canada, loses a lot of space there because much of Canada's population lives within 300 miles of the 49th parallel. So that's too low. You have to be 53rd, which is someplace between the middle and the northern end of James Bay, almost at Hudson's Bay.
Yeah.
I heard Jennifer mention Australia too. Will survive. I think.
Well, Australia, the southern part of the African continent, and the southern part of the South American continent should survive. However, they're going through these upheavals at this stage for the reasons I described at first, basically to buy deniability and get all of the first response materials shipped to them from the northern continents so that when they require it, they won't have it in the north.
Yeah, Mike mentioned something a while ago. He was saying something like, "How quick, is that rising? When how you will rise? Like how quick? Like
it's a linkage between water flowing over the surface of land and putting it under water." Because you always have to keep the balance. Yeah. If you're dealing with a mini gap, which would say start by just breaking the locks at Sault Ste. Marie and having the water flow out of Lake Superior that way, it would be a relatively slow paced event because there's a limit to how much water can fit in that canal structure leading down to Gore Bay. The thing changes completely, however, should there be a cataclysmic break of the northern peninsula of Michigan, which would then allow all the water to come flowing down quickly. I'm sure that even here on the Canadian Shield, it's not going to be a fun experience. It's going to be survival, but there's going to be, if you can imagine the rising of the land by, say, 23 feet to get the rock that is below ground to the surface, just even with the surface, 23 feet rising in the space of weeks is going to cause cataclysmic damage. And a lot of people will still die, but it's the safest place on Earth.
Well,
except for the southern hemisphere for the next 1,000 years, and then the southern hemisphere goes through the same process. And if we don't solve the problem, then I'm sure that everything on the surface gets liquefied.
Yeah,
including the north and the south and the moho.
Yeah.
Everything turns into liquefaction. Quicksand. Mountains become deserts. Cascades, not called Cascade Mountains for nothing. They are about to cascade. Turn over.
This is the quicker the as soon as Clan Mother can get up on the farm, I guess the quicker.
They have sufficient reason for doing what they're doing. I was telling Jennifer this morning that if there's one thing she should be able to grasp now is the importance of the knowledge that she has. And whether she is able to share that with others through speech is questionable. But certainly by performance art or by her paintings, she can access things that she couldn't verbalize. And that's all part of the reason why she's being kept where she is. We found out through Jenny's searches as well is that the training school for border guards in Canada is at Rigaud, Quebec, the place where I was programmed as a child.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's called Rigaud de Vaudreuil, and it's the western end of the island of Montreal in a place called Dorion, and Dorion is from the word Orion. That's where all the border guards go for their training, and their key phrase is Poe, as in Edgar Allan Poe, and for them it stands as port of entry.
Oh, yeah.
Everything begins at a port of entry. Yeah. And they are not managed by anybody in the Canadian government. They are an agency, just like the tax collector was CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency, which basically means no one in Canada has any authority over them. And they are basically the government of Canada running the show on their own. And when you study how they're functioning, even their own managers and ministers have no power. The power resides in the hands of border guards. 25, 30-year-old border guards. Many of them are women. And if you look at the rejects at the border, everything I've heard, apart from criminals or people who have overstayed their visitor's permit, most of them, 90%, I would say, are women. So the women are trying to prevent women from coming into Canada through their authority as border guards.
Yeah, and I heard they have, like, it's possible they have some type of device or something for recognizing a woman.
I'm certain they have their own communications network, and they would know who's coming. Many of the women who've had breast implants would have ground positioning devices without their knowledge, and they can be tracked. I had a breast operation when I was 12 years old. I would suspect that I can be tracked when I'm traveling from place to place. So there you are. Now my master's called. Chickens, cats, goats.
Yeah.
Even the rooster started crowing. You know what they say in the Bible. When the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. Have a good day.
Okay, Glenn.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.